Welcome, welcome, Tobias as well, and Lorraine, to our participants as well who are online. You are all welcome here. It's wonderful to be able to be with you. As soon as I walked in this afternoon, I just felt the tremendous energy that you are all generating for such an important event. So it's a privilege for me to be here moderating this session this afternoon. My name is Claudia Seymour, and I am at the Graduate Institute. I'm the head of applied research, projects, and practice, and I'm a lecturer at the Institute. And today I have the great pleasure of introducing this tremendous panel of experts, and people have such stories to share with us. The title of this afternoon's workshop is Unlocking Telework for Refugees. We're going to be having first a key intervention from Professor Richard Baldwin. So the first sort of 30 minutes or so, then some updates on research.
Was 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes. All right. But you have a lot to say, lots of questions, and maybe some updates on the research that you are doing with Yasmina and Tobias. We're going to have Mariia speaking about her experience. And then after those 30 minutes, we're going to go into some roundtable group work sessions so that we can all be very participative and share ideas and good experiences. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Professor Richard Baldwin. He is a professor of international economics at the Graduate Institute, as well as the founder and editor-in-chief of Vox. He'll be giving the welcome keynote speech and an introduction to this topic of telework for refugees. Professor Baldwin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for those kind words. What I thought I'd do is kind of set the scene by first putting telework for refugees into a broader context, which is part of a line of research I've been doing for quite a long time on globalization. And most specifically, in 2019, I wrote a book on the digital technology and the future of work, in which telework, international telework, plays a very large role. And then I want to talk a little bit about the background for this particular project, how it came about and what we were hoping for. And then to close with some of our hopes for how it could develop and hopefully what it will do. And I also want to thank Sergei Popov's foundation, who has helped support this research that's making it possible. Now, the background is about digital tech changing the world, which is a topic all of you see in your news feeds every single day. It's one of the grand challenges of the 21st century. And in particular, it's changing globalization. And in some general way, what digital technology is doing is moving things, activities, professions, from things to thoughts. Because digital technology is all about moving bits and bytes, which is really about thoughts, much less things. Digital technology is primarily affecting things you can't drop on your foot, so to speak. So many things in all activities of life are moving from something that's more material to something that's more mental. And dematerializing, reducing the weight of the things we exchange and the things we do in some sense. That's a very broad way of saying it. But in particular, globalization, international commerce, the exchange between nations, in my view, is going to move away from trading in goods and move towards trading in services. Another way to say that, instead of focusing on goods crossing borders, what we'll be having is offices crossing borders, remote teams involving international people, which I've, in my writing, called telemigrants. And I think this will be a very, very important development in the global economy going forward. It's already starting, but picking up fast, where in essence, people work in offices in other countries while staying at home. And that is something that goes on all the time in certain industries, say IT or web development or translation or copy editing or logo preparation. There's a number of sectors and interests where it's absolutely standard to involve foreign workers in the workflow of an office, say here in Switzerland or whatever. And I think it's going to be that much going forward. So this is something I've been talking about for almost 10 years now. But COVID, of course, accelerated it. And just to, when I first started talking about some of these ideas in 2019, especially in Europe, but especially in Asia, I had to bring a video to show people what working from home looked like, because they would be like, oh, no way. There's, we can't work from home. No way. It's certainly not another home abroad. So it's showing videos of companies that coordinated across, that sort of stuff. Now you don't have to show those videos because all of us have worked from home, or at least know people who work from home. And that was a massive acceleration in the possibility of digital technology transforming the relationship between workers in their workplace and their companies and whatnot. And so far, it's mostly been domestic telework. People went from their office to working from home. And for a long time, it was called work from home. It's starting to be more internationalized. And I think that is what will go forward in general. So that's my grand scheme. This is one part of a general trend of globalization, which I think in just 10 years, 10, 15 years, most of international commerce will be in services. And much of that will be office workers sitting in one country, working in offices in another, just because the arbitrage possibilities are so enormous. Now, if I can stretch your patience a little bit before we talk about the project, I want to talk a little bit about the implications of that I see coming for the global economy. So for the rich countries, where service sector workers, office workers, are more or less overpaid by international standards, this will be disruptive. Not for all of them, but for many of them. The basic point is that services, office work, has been non-traded forever. And so there's been no kind of pressure to keep the wages and prices in line with international standards. Nowhere near like it has been in goods. So that it costs different amounts to produce goods in different places, but nowhere near as much as the cost of workers in service sector, where 15-to-1 is a very common thing. For example, between the United States and Colombia, where I did some work. So it will be relatively disruptive, in my view, for G7 offices. But globalization is always creating more competition for a country's least competitive workers, but more opportunities for its most competitive workers. So in some parts of the G7 economy, this opening up will be quite threatening and opening more or less direct wage competition, which I suspect will lead to an upheaval, which was the second word in the title of my book. Did I mention I had a book? You're lucky I didn't have to put up a slide of it and ask you to all buy a copy, but never mind. But in the developing world, this is essentially going to allow them to export their comparative advantage, which is quality adjusted, low-cost labor. And there are plenty of people who do bookkeeping and accounting and HR and every single possible office skill. It goes on in Nairobi and in Bogota, in Brasilia, everywhere. There's these people who can do these things, and they are competitive on a global scale. So I believe it will lead to a continuation of the emerging market miracle, where there's service-led export growth, where the development looks more like Bangalore, not China, not South China. So it's not factories, it's cities and offices. And so that, I think, will be great for world cohesion, since the emerging market miracle, which has been basically limited to East Asia or a few commodity exporting countries, will spread widely, especially in the middle income countries. So that's the general sort of background about it. So let me dial down a lot more. So as you can hear, I feel very comfortable talking about the world economy at 10,000 feet and generalizing in great sweeping assertions. But I felt it was time to make this more concrete, to actually use this opportunity, which I see is going to be spreading, but I can see it right now, for good in Geneva, for a group of people that many of us are concerned about, which is Ukrainian refugees. So that was the spark of the idea. And actually it was Tamara, is she here? Or she's probably making sure everything's working outside. But anyways, it was her idea because she's hosting a couple of Ukrainian refugees in her house. And we were talking about, what can we do with telework? And she said, well, they actually don't do anything all day long, but probably could. So we got this idea, well, maybe we could do something in a practical way to help them get online and working. And so that was just the spark of the idea. And we hired Tomias and Jasmine to make sure. So we actually have somebody who knows what they're doing in this field to get it started. And they contacted or found a set of Ukrainian refugees in Switzerland who are interested in this and started asking them, what are the problems? What do you need? How could we help? How does it fit in? And that's how the project sort of started. And what we hope to, that's what you'll hear about where we are right now. But the hope is that at the end of this, there will be a set of people who are working online and having a better life, feeling not, remember, work isn't just about money. Work is about feeling you're contributing, that you're worthwhile. You're not just laying around the house all day long watching TV and tweeting. It's actually, when you work, you feel better about yourself. And so it's also about, personal development for all these people. So hopefully at the end, it'll get there. And as Tobias and Yasmin may tell you, while we were looking around the scoping of, we found actually a number of people had similar ideas in different countries, in different situations, that refugees working online is a real thing. And we've also found a number of places where they're actually doing it. So part of this, our hope, is that there will be kind of a great joining and an acceleration of the idea that this is one of the ways of making lives of refugees less miserable and more connected. So that's our grand hope, that at the end, this will spark a spreading and a continuation. And in some sense, we view it as a kind of a pilot project with a specific outcome that proves it works, and then maybe attracting more funding and getting it spread and getting it more professionalized during the whole thing. So that's my inspiration. So that's what I do. I get people excited about ideas that I don't have time to work on. So, or patience to work on. So now I'm going to stop with the inspiration, and we're going to turn to the perspiration that has been going on. So thank you very much for that, Claudia.
Professor Baldwin, thank you. That was indeed inspiring. And just the possibility of overpaid office workers being moved out and onto other opportunities seems really exciting for Geneva. And I look forward to seeing that come true. So here I would be very happy to introduce Yasmina Chaudhry, who's a project manager for the Telework for Refugees project, and Tobias Drilling, research collaborator for the Telework for Refugees project. And they're going to tell us about this project, the sweat and the details and where they're at as of now. Over to you, Tobias.
Thank you very much, Claudia. So I'm very happy to see all of you here. And I want to take this moment to thank everyone that has been part of our Telework for Refugees project so far, and is also supporting us during this workshop. People in this room and beyond have until now already been so kind to share a lot of ideas with us, to brainstorm together with us, to share the knowledge, to give us guidance, to give us structure, and so many first inputs for this project that we're working on. But also at the same time, I really want to take this moment now with all of you in the room to thank especially all the asylum seekers and refugees that have been so kind to share their knowledge and their experiences with us. So with this workshop, at this moment, we find ourselves really at the half time of the project with this workshop. So we started with a month of an exploration phase, and then started after this month really connecting to different stakeholders working in this field. We started talking to refugees and to asylum seekers in Switzerland, and to tackle this unlocking of telework for refugees. We identified some of the gaps that we find in the current system, and we started to test proposed solutions. So one small example for this is that just 2 weeks ago, we had an upskilling Upwork workshop for refugees where about 8 refugees joined, and we shared the skills that are needed to do this kind of online work. And and also exchange experiences that different people have already with this kind of online work to together then move forward and figure out if these are ways into the future. And still, all of this is just the beginning, as we've also mentioned, of our shared research project. So there are many open questions still about the viability, the challenges, the opportunities, and implications of telework for refugees in Switzerland and beyond. And this is also where all of you sitting here come in, because with attending this workshop, you're all invited to join our community of practitioners and researchers in order to unlock telework for refugees in Switzerland and beyond. So let's stay in contact. Feel free to also, after the workshop, come to us, speak with us about this project at the apéro or via email later on, so that we can, yes, all together try and make the efforts to work towards this unlocking telework for refugees. And with this, I pass it on to you, Yasmin.
Just talking, amazing. Hi, so I just want to take a minute to echo Tobias and thanking everyone who's here today with us and who's online, and for also indulging us with all our various requests and interview questions. If you haven't heard from us yet, you will after this workshop, so stay tuned. Allow me to just summarize today's workshop, and our goals. We're really aiming to assess the feasibility of telework in practical terms and applicable ways. We're hoping to achieve this as a collective, all of us together, and we want to draw inspiration from regions and programs where similar programs are already in place, and some of you are already working on those projects. So we have designed the tables have been designed to encourage you to have a dialogue and a collaboration among sectors. Hopefully, today we have a really nice sample of the NGO sector, the international organization sector. We're not all delocalized yet, and also the government, the state, and students, and also research. So the idea is really to get us all together. We're hoping to break down our respective silos so we can bridge some gaps, the one that have been identified a bit, and also start identifying the challenges and access to telework. And a second step in today's workshop, so we're having a small workshop of 20 minutes, a discussion and a break. And the second step, we'd love to have some potential solutions, maybe ideals, maybe applicable. Because after all, at TASC, at the Future of Work Summit, we're dedicated to shape the future of work by ensuring inclusivity for all. So personally, I look forward to collecting your inputs and to share them with you all afterwards, and continue the dialogue as much as possible.
Wonderful, Yasmin. Tobias, thank you very much for that introduction. And now we're going to move online. We have Lorraine Charles, who's going to be joining us. Lorraine, I hope you're there and you can hear us. She has such wonderful experiences to share with us. She is a co-founder and executive director of Na'amal, an organization that links forcibly displaced people with remote work opportunities. So Lorraine, the screen and the microphone is now yours to share your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really great to be here today. And I want to start by saying, Professor Richard, I'm really happy to hear that you've been working on this for a long time. I too have been working on this since 2016 when I first did research in the Middle East. And when I proposed remote work for refugees in 2017, an article by I wrote for the World Economic Forum, people said to me, no, niche idea, never going to work. Refugees cannot work remotely. But I'm happy I persisted, and this is what led me to create Na'amal. So I'm going to talk about the work of Na'amal, highlighting one of our current programs in Ethiopia of how we integrate gig work as an entry point to more sustainable employment. I'll talk about the opportunities and challenges of gig work, contextualizing its relevance within the EU and broader, based on our experience, but really thinking about gig work as an entry point. So Na'amal at its core is an organization dedicated to creating opportunities and empowering individuals in marginalized communities with a focus on refugees and individuals in the Global South. Our approach is to provide a pathway for sustainable and dignified employment through our human or soft skills training program And this happens in tandem with technical upskilling programs provided by our many partners, such as MIT React, Digital Opportunity Trust, and many others. Since 2019, we've trained 250 refugees from 22 countries, including Syria, Afghanistan, the DRC, Somalia, Eritrea, Burundi, Venezuela, and Ukraine. And we've also matched 170 mentors to refugees. We have 50% of our program being women. There was a question earlier about female participation. We're very conscious that this is a space that we need to be deliberate about including women. So through what we do, we've made it easy for refugees to access gig work as well as freelancing opportunities. So I just want to talk a little bit about gig work, because often there's a confusion about gig work, freelancing, telework. So gig work we see as flexible short-term work compared to traditional freelancing, which is more long-term, sustainable, and long in duration. So gig work, we see it as allowing refugees to do tasks that suit their skills and abilities at an entry point. So I want to talk about our program in Ethiopia as an example of how we utilize gig work. So our program in Ethiopia, we've got 30 individuals, 25 refugees, 5 Ethiopians, training to be full stack web developers. We're using gig work as a way for them to get experience and income whilst they're doing the training. So for us, gig work is just an entry point for our learners as they develop more sustainable skills for more sustainable careers. At the end of the training, all of our learners will have an internship and match with a mentor. And we see this is really important because this mentor, in a way, is our learners' access to the world of work. If we think about how we got our first job, it wasn't through applying for jobs, it was through our network. Refugees don't have this social capital. So this is what our mentors do, provide this social capital. And the idea is that for our learners to all have access to work, as Professor Richard said, outside, in this case, Ethiopia. They'll be working for companies in the global north. Also companies in other places in Africa. Kenya has a burgeoning tech sector. We see our learners as working beyond their borders, beyond their circumstances, beyond their host communities. We see gig work as particularly valuable to countries with growing economies. It's actually a low barrier to entry for people to slowly acquire new skills. By offering these flexible work options, gig work enables individuals to balance their responsibilities, whether this is education, whether this is family obligations, while still earning an income. It empowers them to eventually transition into more secure and sustainable long-term employment. While gig work has numerous opportunities, it also comes with its fair share of challenges. Within the EU, these challenges are even more apparent. Language barriers, cultural differences, varying legal frameworks within the EU complicate the seamless integration of gig workers. Ensuring a fair compensation and protecting the rights of gig workers while guaranteeing social benefits can often be complex in the gig economy. Nevertheless, there is an immense potential for gig work as an entry point to sustainable employment within the EU and beyond, while acknowledging the relevance of gig work in creating supportive ecosystem, how we can harness the skills of individuals while addressing the challenges that arise. So at NAML, we're really proud to be at the forefront of integrating remote work in its many forms into refugee communities. As I've said, we've been doing this since 2020. We did our first project in Jordan in 2020, and we're currently on our 6th project, I think, really providing an opportunity for refugees to work beyond their borders, but also proving that this model works. And I think this is the important thing. How can we prove to the naysayers, and there were many of them initially, that this model works? We have to cease thinking, and I want to end by talking about what we need for this space to be even more sustainable. We have to cease thinking and operating in silos. Whether you're a policymaker, a business, a refugee or just an interested individual, there is a role that everyone can play in making this reality and making this space much easier. We have to figure out where your role begins and engage in conversations with those that are earnestly seeking to put what we have learned into action. Let's continue to create this collaborative effort and shape the future of work that leaves no one behind. And for me, this is really important. How can we create a space that leaves no one behind? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. What a story, what experiences that we have to learn from with you. I think the story of dignity that is at the foundation of all the work that Namel is doing and the experience that you have is really inspiring. And just hearing as well how you speak of the flexibility and the autonomy that you allow your learners to be able to benefit. So there's this wonderful sense of control and agency that you can come in there while also providing motivation for future development. I liked as well the focus on social capital, right? That's actually very interesting. So I think the conversation is going to continue. We're going to be, I think, unpacking some of these lessons that you are learning about legal frameworks, about the rights, about the social protections. I mean, I think these are problems that are experienced not only in refugee affected places, but in Europe as well. And so with the experiences that you're bringing together, we actually have some real material to get to some concrete solutions. So thank you very much. I'd now like to turn the floor to Ms. Mariia Solodovnyk. It's wonderful to have you here. Mariia is an English-Ukrainian technical translator at SLB, which is a company that was formerly known as Schlumberger, a French company based in Texas, working in Ukraine. Mariia is going to tell us about her experiences since she's arrived in Switzerland in the last year, and how it is to work remotely for this company, and what we might be able to learn from this very personal experience. So Mariia, thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to share my experience. So COVID-19 took everyone by surprise, posing new challenges that disrupted our lives. We vividly remember the closure of hairdressing salons, restaurants, and offices, and my company was not an exception, and it made the decision to transition all the operations online. By 2020, I had already established myself as an independent freelance translator with several years of experience in remote written translations. However, the so-called new normal demanded even more than just tracking translation projects online, and it required me to master the art of interpreting presentations, workshops, and the meetings by using my headphones, microphone, and the Teams platform. As the time went on, I realized that the hours I used to spend commuting between my home and the office could be better utilized for an extra hour of sleep or indulging in culinary experiments at my own, and they were just obvious, clear advantages. However, it also brought about some difficulties. Living alone in a rented apartment in Kiev, I began to feel the impact of a lack of personal interaction, and this influenced my emotional well-being. As humans, we are inherently social creatures, and independent decision makers need to share ideas and seek support from the others. Therefore, it is crucial to allocate several hours in our work schedule to communicate, for communication, whether with the team members or representatives from the local community. And the specific number of hours per work or per day depend on your on our personal preferences. However, incorporating such interactions into our daily routine is essential. I followed on this approach, and it greatly helped alleviate feelings of isolation. In addition, it is vital to include physical activities and ample rest of your daily routine to achieve a healthy work-life balance. And yes, remote work requires high level of self-discipline. 3 hours do not equate to being free all day. Rather, they provide the freedom to choose which activities to engage and at specific time. It is crucial to match your energy levels and productivity to the tasks at hand. Personally, I find the evening hours to be my most productive, so I allow myself to sleep in, if possible, in the morning. These solutions did not come to me at once. They are shaped by my own experiences and insights from the others. However, when the war broke out in Ukraine in 2022, I found myself fully prepared to work online as a refugee anywhere in the world. All that I had to do was to push my laptop in the backpack and board an evacuation train heading to Europe. And naturally, upon my arrival to Switzerland, I faced numerous challenges that are typical for any refugee affected by war. A language barrier, homesickness, and the fear of inadvertently violating local rules and regulations abroad are just a few to mention. Moreover, I quickly realized that to succeed in Geneva labor market, I needed to be the best of the best. The city is a vibrant multinational and multicultural hub, attracting highly talented professionals seeking a better life. And I was not feeling so much proficient to compete with them. That is why after a year of residing here in Geneva, I'm still working online, doing online translations for the same company. I generally enjoy my job, and this helps me feel a demanded specialist in my field. On the other hand, teleworking for the Ukrainian company while living in Geneva implies different legal and financial restrictions, and harmonizing these requirements poses an ongoing challenge, and I cannot offer any universal solution. However, I strongly believe that meaningful progress can only be achieved through the open dialogue involving representatives of Swiss authorities and enterprises, public associations, and other stakeholders. Basically, our collective presence here serves the purpose of seeking sustainable solutions to these complex issues. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, thank you, Mariia. What a story. And not only for your own fortitude and strength and commitment, and we know just how competitive the Geneva job market is, or graduates of the Graduate Institute know how competitive it is. So imagine coming here without all the backing of that's gotten here in the first place. So that's really impressive. I think what you also talk about is your company, the SLB, that actually has facilitated and allowed you to keep working in this circumstance. So here again, we see the key role of these kinds of leading companies who are crucial partners in this kind of initiative. So that's fantastic. We're now moving on to the workshop-y part of the workshop, right? So roundtable discussions, and I'm going to seek a little bit of guidance from you, Yasmin and Tobias, in terms of numbers, but I have here 3 different people and potentially 4. Dimitri, I don't know if you're going to be part of this, but first we have Professor Tobias Fritschi, who is the director of the Institute for Social Security and Social Policy, as well as a lecturer at Bern University of Applied Sciences, representing the governmental perspective. And Professor Fritschi, you're going to be doing this online, and I think for our participants online, you will be managing that conversation. Is that right? Okay, so that is our one fire starter. I hope that I can be a fire starter one day once I graduate from being a moderator. We also have Hovig Etzemezian. I hope I pronounced that okay. Is it, please, how would you pronounce it? Hovig, thank you. So Hovig is a fire starter in person right here, and he is the head of innovation at UNHCR. And Hovig will be presenting the International Governmental Organization Table, IGO. Is that right? Okay. And then we have Daniel Stein, co-founder of Cuisine Lab. Where is Daniel? Great, Daniel. Okay. And you're a professor at the Geneva Business School, and you'll be representing the private sector roundtable. Fantastic. Excellent. And I will be at the roundtable with the international organizations as well. Do we need Dimitri to serve as a fire starter? So Dimitri, where are you? Wonderful, Dimitri, welcome. And so you'll be the fire starter for the international organization. So what we're going to do is 5 minutes. Each of our fire starters will be talking about their experience, sharing information, and then we will have 15 minutes among each of the participants to talk to come up with some really useful material. Then we'll take a little bit of a break. Fire starters will move around and we'll have a second round of discussions to really go for some solutions so that we can end this afternoon in a very practical, forward-looking and achievable way. Welcome back, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt these really rich, very interesting conversations. There's so much to say and so much good to keep sharing. And so what we'd like to do now, the schedule has adapted and we are adaptable types of people. So instead of going into the second round, we let you speak a little bit longer. Instead of the coffee break, there's going to be the apéro at 5 o'clock. And we're going to invite the fire starters, including online. We have Tobias as well, who is online. The fire starters, we're going to have Dimitri, we're going to have Hovig, and we're going to have on this table, Daniel. Wonderful. So if you could each give 3 minutes, Tobias, I don't know if you heard that, just a 3-minute roundup of what your table has discussed so that we can all hear and share and then think about what is going to come next. So who would like to start? Perhaps Daniel, would you like to start? Would someone else like to start? Yes? Just a quick summary, and then we can all be taking notes to see, well, what are we going to do with all of this going forward?
Well, there were a lot of points I think in the one was about the impact.
Sorry.
Let's see here. So I'll summarize a few things. There was the idea that we need to change perceptions of how the refugee population is looked at, and also consider maybe just the idea of calling them refugees to begin with, when the labor market is a fluid thing. So the designating them as refugees is maybe not even needed in some aspect. The permitting, because there's 26 cantons in Switzerland and each canton has their own rules. This also creates challenges. The emergence of AI and how that's going to impact telework is also going to have a big impact. There's different classes of refugees. There's refugees that are rich and poor, and ones that are less skilled, more skilled, ones that are much richer and more skilled. Of course, they may be finding out other ways to already exist. Where the lower skilled ones, the need of training and support is going to be much greater. How do we make a case to give people the support necessary? Do they look as a cost to society? Maybe these programs look as too big of a cost. This was addressed with the reality that most refugees will stay, 90% will stay in Switzerland, won't go back. And many of them that arrive that are older, 30 and up, 35 and up, most of them will find it very difficult to enter the job market and will have a huge cost to society. Like a family of 4 might cost up to 1.5 million during the working life of those refugees. So not finding a ways for economic insertion will be a greater cost than providing or developing training programs that identify even the lowest skilled workers a way for entry points. Also that Spain and Portugal support this digital nomad or teleworking now with allowing permitting, because maybe also the transferring from country to country, there should be more fluidity in the labor movement. There was the concept is if a refugee in Switzerland can earn well teleworking, why would they also live here when they could maybe potentially go somewhere once they get a permit status that allows them to a cheaper country? But that also was discussed that there's an uncertainty moving to a new place and that starting over again might be difficult. So I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniel. That's very rich, very interesting. Hovig, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we went international and then we came local. So maybe in the outline, we looked at 5 pillars of the challenges to the subject matter. Globally, connectivity, so access to connectivity, access to hardware and devices, upskilling, and so upskilling and education, to job matching, job placement, to the ability to be paid, and so fair remuneration and modalities of payment. But I think the conversation steered towards and focused more on the first, if we go at the tail end of job placement, sustainability models of how do we ensure that we have a system that year in, year out creates a mechanism of job placement. And how do you do that in a humanitarian setting where we're supposed to have an exit strategy? So do we cross from humanitarian to a more business-like mentality of saying, well, this is like any other sector, like universities, where you have a system that exists to make sure that the job matching is there and the upskilling is there, and it's continuous. And I think the tangent to that was maybe a collaboration between government and private sector, international organizations and others, to ensure that year in, year out sustainability model on job placement and upskilling. So that came up. The other important piece that came up is language. So like not being deaf to language barriers. So employers in certain countries, the example of Japan came about that, well, Japan might need a lot of jobs in certain sectors, but language is a big barrier. So how do we then address the language barrier? So that was an interesting, I mean, everyone who spoke had interesting ideas, but these are some summaries. So that one came up. And the other maybe that I could catch is the idea of, well, when it comes to upskilling and then employment, the idea of certification, and as opposed to skills first approach. So the suggestion was, instead of focusing on certification, that there needs to be a change of culture, that refugees are recognized for the skills that they have or that were built, and less on the stringent kind of certification that a lot of employers want in certain sectors to employ. So like, how do you then resolve that tension? So that's I think a summary of what we spoke.
Thank you. Hopefully, great, excellent. Can we move now on to Dimitri, and then Tobias? We have not forgotten you. We're going to come online to close out this fire starter sharing.
Thanks so much. We had a fascinating discussion, and I absolutely won't do it justice. But I think we began really with a discussion of some of what one of the speakers on this table called the B side of remote work, of gig work. And that evolved into a discussion about the aspects of isolation and the lack of integration and a lack of human connection that even having work that is remote work doesn't address compared to unemployment, and the challenges in overcoming that. And that led us to a discussion of some of the other difficulties that may be preventing gig economy work and employment work, difficulty in understanding regulations, difficulty in accessing government services and NGO services, a lack of knowledge of what's out there. And that led us to a discussion of one potential model of solution that we kind of threw around, which is the question of, can you solve some of these problems through the creation of spaces modeled on something like a WeWork or an impact hub model, to ruthlessly steal other people's IP, that basically brought together, that were spaces specifically designed to bring people together that are looking for work in this space, where they can access assistance, they can interact not just with one another, but with the community. And it is specifically designed to give them a space where they can, for example, replicate the experience of being in a WeWork, which frankly in Switzerland costs more than rent in most countries. So is not accessible to someone who is trying to make a little bit of money on the side while being, for example, a refugee. So what what would a solution like that look like? What would it need to solve? And what are the problems it could potentially address? What was the discussion at the table? I haven't summarized a quarter of the points people raised, but that was a flavor of what we talked about.
I was at that table. That was an excellent summary, Dimitri, full of richness and possibility. Tobias, the screen and microphone are now yours. What did you help us to discover online?
Yes, thank you very much. We had a nice discussion, moderated also by Lorraine. And we had Bruce from the Adecco company, from the intermediate labor market, participating. And we touched the same topics like we heard before, also about skills and about also risks of telework in the area of isolation and social networks. We started with the point of the potential assessment that is important for also the state, the government perspective, because we did an online survey with 8,000 refugees from the Ukraine, and to see how their labor market relevant characteristics are. And we have seen that they are highly qualified and highly motivated for the Swiss labor market. They have 70% have tertiary education. We have more than 50% that have good language skills in English or even national language. And what we discussed afterwards, that we have to think a bit broader than just the actual crisis. There are other crises emerging, other crises going on, and we have to think broader for also other groups of refugees. That is also the perspective of State Secretariat of Migration, questioning now all the migrants with a deepened questionnaire about labor market characteristics. I think this is something we learned from this crisis, and that will give possibilities for a better job matching in the future. Then we also were talking about these future expectations about wages that we heard from Professor Baldwin in the first intervention. I think there we also see maybe downsides of telework when we think that yes, the concurrence about the talents will be bigger, and the wages will be maybe not those that are expected from the educational levels that the persons bring along. Nevertheless, there are very much chances. We were discussing for the telework, also these chances for personal development we heard, for self-competence and social competences that develop in a different manner, and that we will have to sustain also with the appropriate educational offers from schools and from universities. Thank you.
Wonderful, Tobias. Thank you very much. Thank you for our online participants for these rich contributions. So we have 5 minutes. We have so many rich contributions that you've all made from here. I've known the team has been taking notes, and something will come out of these discussions. I've heard very clear administrative, legal, tax-related steps that could be made. I've heard a lot. I think we've all heard a lot about this human side, the B side, the social feeling of being here and being alone, and what we can do about that. What I've certainly heard is the skills, the tremendous skills proven through the work of Tobias and his team that refugees are bringing to Switzerland. So I think there's something very important here in shifting the narrative away from the refugee, and our refugee friends have been saying they don't want to be known here as refugees. They want to be here as people contributing to the economy, to the society, as we all wish we would. So I think there's also something to work in the narrative about how much better Switzerland is thanks to the presence of refugees. And so if we go forward on that, I think we have a pretty constructive agenda, research work. Yes, me and Tobias. Good luck going forth. Now it is my pleasure to introduce correctly this time Dmitry Grozubinski, who is the Executive Director of the Geneva Trade Platform. Dmitry, the floor is now yours to do a few closing remarks before this workshop closes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you for the outstanding moderation work. It is not easy to herd this many cats on a topic this complex. When we were conceptualizing this project, when Richard, Tamara, Katrina, and I first sat down to talk about it, we were profoundly aware of how little we knew. For Richard and myself, we're trade folk. Katrina brings a sort of future of work and future of societal change angle to this. Tamara's the only one of us who can get things done. But none of us are refugee specialists. None of us have worked in this field. So bringing on board Yasmin and Tobias was our first step. But for us, this workshop has been a phenomenal way to try to fully understand the huge problem that our ideas are on the margins of, and to begin moving us towards the next session. The final session of this body of work will take place in a couple of months in September on the margins of the WTO Public Forum. And what we were hoping to do is to be able to bring to that session something that at least resembles some policy recommendations and some potential next steps. Well, those policy recommendations will be, I think, informed and driven by everything that we have heard here. Our note takers are furiously typing every idea far faster than we can write them down. But we want to be able to make recommendations both for how this project can grow and what the various actors represented in this room and more broadly can consider in taking some of the ideas that Richard's and other people's research have identified about where the labor market is going, take what we know about the role of the experiences of refugees in our societies and see what can be recommended to make those just a little bit better, to make sure that we are positioning our structures well to be able to help them to get the most out of it while managing the B side, while making sure we never forget the fundamental goal of human dignity, integration into societies, and making people feel empowered and welcome. So it's my job to thank all of you so much, to thank our fantastic technical team, and to thank the events team, our camera folk, and everyone else. There is so much work that goes into making things like this happen. And finally, of course, to thank Tobias and Yasmin, who will hopefully still be on speaking terms with us after we have hijacked their every weekend for months. So with that, thank you all so much for being here.
Drinks are outside. Go ahead.